No, and we saw what happened. We was injured and we kind of lost. We lost that heartbeat in the middle.
Mm,
So I agree, but it's very difficult to find these players. They don't just
yeah,
grow on
yeah,
trees.
yeah.
So you can find a replacement. You can find a backup, but a backup is not the same as finding, another
No,
another
Uh,
one of him.
it's not like going to Tesco's and just getting another, you know, bottle of Schweppes. You know, you just
Well, this is what I'm saying. We
you
always we always had this thing of, oh well, we need another striker. We need a backup for Kane. All right, well, you can get a backup for Kane. You're not going to get another Harry Kane.
no. But also, you might not get the
So
player that fits your club as well, and that's the thing. I mean, none of
yeah,
us had even heard of though Bentancur or Kulusevski most likely before they came to the club, and now
true.
we're thinking they're indispensable. And then at the time, Juventus thought they'd done amazingly well to get 70 million out of us.
Yeah, absolutely. We're like, thanks, bargain.
Yeah. So it
But
just
that's the way it
shows you,
goes,
doesn't it?
right?
It gives the
One
lie to the
man's
fact that you have to spend fortunes, and it also gives the lie to the fact that you have to buy big names. Sometimes it's just about finding the right player for your club.
and that's why you hope you've got a good recruitment department, right? Then they're
Yeah.
they're they're looking for these diamonds which are going to fit, as you say, one man's, trash is another man's treasure type thing. It's kind of like that's what you want. You want to find, say,
Mhm.
okay, that's cool. We'll take them off your hands and they'll fit our system perfectly.
So, Rich, talking about diamonds, Basuma came on. I think he's really shaping up to be a tremendous player. We changed our tactics and pushed Bentancur up a bit further forward. I felt. What was your take on how that influenced the game?
Uh, well, I mean, in the context of how the game had changed at the time as well, I think the game had opened up in a way that allowed them all to perform in a much more open way. I've only seen him in fits and starts, and I'm quite pleased with his progress so far in general.
Mm,
That's my thought. It's going to be a bit of a difficult year for him, I think, isn't it? Considering that Højbjerg can apparently play with only one leg, and Bentancur is if he's fit, he's indispensable or seen to be indispensable. Then, perhaps this is going to be the season for him. He's going to be like this, and he'll have half an hours. And
mhm.
and I think he did. I think he did a decent job of staking a claim to not be left sitting there until the last 2 minutes. Um, it's not worked out for him in other games. I think, remember in a few weeks back, I think he was totally anonymous at West Ham, wasn't he? If I
Mhm.
remember rightly.
Yeah.
But certainly as a player that's growing into the squad, he's showing some promise.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, personally, I think he's starting to show the player that we thought he might be. I think it's taken a while, but then, some players take half a season to really find their feet at a new club. I feel at the moment we're really seeing an athletic, confident, influential player when he comes on. He's making the most of those opportunities when he comes on. I thought he was beating the press, beating his man, starting attacks off, he's breaking play up. And I thought, in the last few games, we've seen more and more of that. It just looks really promising to me. What about you, Simon?
Yeah, I think that's fair comment. Want I feel like I saw more of him playing against us than I've seen him playing for us, if that makes
Mm,
sense.
mm,
So when we were going to sign him, I was like, oh, I'm really excited actually, because he's caused us so many problems before, and actually, I'd be really happy to get on our side. And clearly, it's taking him a bit of time. I'm saying inverted, air rabbits, because it's not really that long, but it's taking him some time to build up, get into the squad, get into the system, etc., etc. But I think we are starting to see that, and clearly there's a method into integrating him into the side and getting him time on the pitch. But I am hungry to see it
hmm
because we've seen what he can do when we've come up against him. So I really want to see him at his peak playing for us.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think I think we saw more of Perisic that game as well. I think he looked like he had probably his best game for a while. Although I think Sessegnon still doesn't look very confident. I'm a
No,
bit worried about Sessegnon at the moment. Anyone else, or you more hopeful?
I think it was. I mean, I think one of the biggest benefits of having Perisic at the club is that he will be able to positively influence Sessegnon, and perhaps it's going to take some time for that to happen. I I think he has very definitely had he's suffering from a lack of something, whether it's understanding or confidence. I'm not entirely sure which, but he's kind of
Oh,
plateaued a little bit and not in a place where we would want him to, if I'm being kind.
yeah,
Mm.
no, I agree. I agree. So Leeds went down to 10. I thought we might score a few more, to be honest, but that was kind of towards the end of the game. But I think we just kind of cruised it at that point.
I agree. I kind of was at this point. I was kind of really hoping that um, Bentancur would get a hat trick. I kind of felt like he had it in him,
Mm,
and I felt that he could
deserved
have.
it.
Yeah, and I think he would have deserved it, and I think that would have been great for him. Blah blah blah. So I kind of that's where my head was at. I was like, and actually, I felt they were still piling on a bit of pressure. So I felt we just needed to kill it off and get another goal. If he got another goal, it would have killed the game. Appreciate in the last 5 minutes, but actually taken the steam out of it a little bit. He would have gone home with a match ball, and I think quite rightly, he would have been, lauded as a hero of the day, and I feel like he would have really deserved it.
So I'm just going to rewind back a little bit. I don't know what you were feeling. Did you go to the game, either of you?
I was there, yeah, I saw you
Yeah,
afterwards.
and you watched it at home, didn't you, Rich?
Yeah, I
So
did.
just
Yeah.
just from just sort of different points of view, I sort of contradicting myself somewhat because I know I did said like I always felt kind of like the game was winnable for us, but there was a point when we went 3-2 down that I was thinking, do you know what? This is so annoying that we've allowed this to happen. I almost felt like I was going to leave at that point, and quite a few fans did leave at that point. Did you feel that, Simon, at all when you were in the ground?
I was very unhappy. I was very grumpy. I don't think I was quite at the point of leaving it because I think at that point it was still a decent amount. Still a fair bit of chunk of game to
Yeah,
go.
it's about 15 minutes,
So
wasn't there, to go? So
yeah, so I was kind of like, okay. And I think had it gone on for another, had we got to 85 minutes, I would might have felt somewhat different. I was like, it's
mm,
still 15 minutes. I was very grumpy, but having seen this come back from twice before, I was kind of hopeful we had it in us.
yeah.
My concern was more about will we keep cool heads and will we work them and then that's how we'll do it. If we're just going to panic and run around, it's never going to happen. But actually, if we keep cool heads and work them, then we will. And I think that's why when when Bentancur got his equalizer, I was kind of like, I'm not celebrating that. That's what you should
Mm,
be
hmm.
doing, and that's where and we shouldn't have got ourselves into this position in the first place. So, that for me, I've kind of felt a bit justified in my anger, but I wasn't quite in a I'm going home because I'm grumpy, and I appreciate some people did, but I
But I
wasn't
suppose
quite
that's where
there.
a lot of us confused, isn't it? What we always feel like, why do we have to go one or two down to start playing? And yet
Mm,
we have seemed to have incredible resilience and character to to come back and win so many games, snatching victory from the jaws of defeat. Which,
yeah.
okay, we shouldn't maybe be in that position, and arguably that's because we need to improve our defense. But
Mm.
but the fact that we are able to come back and show enough character to come back and still win these games is says an awful lot about this team, which is maybe first signs of a winning mentality. Would you say?
Yeah, well, I do agree with that because I think we could all remember a time where we would go behind, we claw it back, or we go behind by two, and then heads a drop, and it's all
Mm,
over, and it just becomes, and it's just like all becomes very self inward looking, and that was frustrating. And the demand was, you pick yourselves up and you carry on. And to be fair, the crowd were kind of cheering them on. It's like, okay, well, we've gone
hmm.
behind, but we carry on. And I think and I hope that they took something from that. And there is a sort of a bit of a belief, which is our mentality is stronger now. But I think the frustration is just there that we shouldn't be going behind every game just so we feel great because we clawed ourselves out of a hole. We should be able to go ahead in a game, And sure, and games can turn and things can happen, but I don't feel like that this should be our trademark, which is, what time's kickoff? Oh, it's 3 o'clock for the opposition and 4 o'clock for Spurs.
Yeah, which has been the joke, isn't it? Most people are like, stay in the pub for the first half, come back and watch the second half and see us win.
Exactly.
So actually, looking at that point, Rich, I'm going to jump to you and just sort of ask you for a bit of an analysis and evaluation of the season thus far. What's your views on how we've been so far in the first kind of, more or less half of the season, I suppose?
Well, I mean, I always have to be. I'm not really the reactionary fan, I tend to be a lot more patient than a lot of my peers, and that's not saying that anybody else is wrong and I'm right. I just have seen an awfully lot of bad things happen over the years, and when it all starts to go wrong, I tend to just resign myself to waiting for it to come to an end. So, there's been an awful lot of unrest, especially in the last few weeks. The football hasn't been very good. At least for that first 45 minutes of almost every game we've played. But, overall, I think, if you'd have said that we would go into the World Cup break having topped the Champions League group and still in the top four, and I can't remember how many points we are off Man City at the moment, because they dropped 3 at the weekend, didn't they? So we're not miles away.
And we're about 8 points ahead of where we were last season.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think on paper it looks like quite a good first part of the season. I obviously understand that it's not been fun to watch, and I haven't particularly enjoyed watching some of it. But overall, I'm quite happy. I've got to say, like we are in the process of this project. This isn't Conte's finished team. It's not his. It's not the team or the squad that he ultimately desires. We are better in some respects than we were last year, and they've chosen to manage. In my view, they've chosen to manage the fixture, the crazy schedule in a sensible, if not attractive way. And most of the time it's worked. It's annoying when it hasn't worked. I mean, if they'd have started playing 20 minutes earlier, we'd have got something out of that Newcastle game, for instance. We should have got something from the fucking Liverpool game, for God's sake. But overall, I think we can't be unhappy with where we are, even if it's not been the nicest thing to watch. And certainly that's my perspective. And I'm not saying that everybody should be happy. I just am.
I mean, we haven't beaten any of the top 6 teams we played. That's one concern. But then again, they've all been away from home, and we haven't played those at home yet.
Yeah, I mean, we did it. The worst thing was going to Arsenal, and that performance at Arsenal was particularly galling. But it's that's the fly in the ointment, isn't it? Really?
Yeah. And so. Simon, your thoughts on that? I've heard this said actually a number of times that this is possibly a tactic, but could it realistically be a tactic, or are we just maybe trying to clutch at straws here to sort of try and justify why the play has been, at times unfathomable, even though we've got the results?
Yeah, so I don't think it's a tactic, because I don't think anybody wants to invite that kind of criticism and attention when it's not really, desirable or favourable. I think, Rich is right. I think it's like you look at it from the macro point of view, and it's like, actually, it's not bad. But then you go drill down and look at specifics and go, okay, things to improve here, and here, and here. But broadly heading in the right direction. What I find fascinating is that if this was the second coming of Poch and it was all about a project, everybody would be, doing unspeakable things of themselves in the corner because they'd be so excited about it.
Do you want to elaborate on that?
No, I'm trying to keep this family friendly. So, but we don't seem that excited that we have a Conte project, and we seem to think that everything should be perfect from the off.
I wonder those. Sorry, Simon, but just to interject there, and I'll let you carry on. But I wonder if that's because nobody is sure that there is such thing as a Conte project, because he is such a short-term manager.
Well, okay, but then, well, which let's accept then